did you really know what to expect? Like, what was your casting process like? Why did you want to do it? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So to a degree, there's some production things that I can't talk about. But the whole process was, I guess, what you would expect, where you initially do an application and there was this video component, and I had no idea what I was doing with the video component. I filmed it in my car in the end just because at least the light was a little bit clearer. And you just kind of had to say a bit about what you were like and why you wanted to be there and why you'd be good for being on an island. So it was, you kind of end up talking out your butt a little bit because you're just trying to go, all right, what am I? Who am I? And what actually makes me interesting enough to go? I did not expect to make it through at all. And then from that point, there's, of course, interviews and that sort of thing. I know some people had some in-person interviews, but because I'm based in South Australia, I actually only had video ones, like Zoom ones and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I read online that you were a national finalist for Miss World Australia and like Miss Universe Australia. Did pageants prepare you in any way for the show? With like the backstabbing and
Hmm.
lying, or maybe not?
Well, I think I've been pretty fortunate with the pageant experiences that I have, and I kind of participated in them for fun. I mean, the first one that I ever did was my first year out of high school, and I got a text from a modeling agency. I'd never done any work with them, but I'd signed up with them. And it said, oh, yeah, we've got this national final for Miss World Australia that's going to happen. We're doing the South Australia casting. Go along. And so I kind of went along for fun. So I'd always treated it not like a joke, but more like an experience. And that's how I treated the show as well, was like an experience. So you just kind of take it as it comes, and then you're not going to be too disappointed. But I suppose I was more prepared for the fact that it can take a long time to get through applications. It can take a long time for filming, recording, and that sort of thing. So none of that was a particularly big surprise for me.
Yeah, so then going into the show, did you have any expectations like going into it? Did you think it was going to be like tough survival wise? And maybe like how did those expectations kind of change? Or did you think it was just going to be like a holiday camping trip?
So I'm actually a scout. They actually didn't do much of the behind the scenes on me. So I was relatively present in the episode that I was, well, the episodes that I was in, but there wasn't much behind the scenes. So they never mentioned the fact that I've done scouts since I was 13. So I have no issue with camping or anything like that. So I've done everything from pageants to roughing it out. At least we had a tent, but sleeping on the sand and that sort of thing, people were horrified by it, like, oh my God, I can't believe you slept on the sand. And I was like, it wasn't too bad. You kind of smush yourself into a little sand hole and you get pretty comfy, actually. It's kind of a therapeutic almost. So I did think that we would be able to forage more, but there was nothing to forage. So we were just surviving off of the supplies that had been dropped on that first day, and there was nothing else really to work with. So we ate a few leaves off the trees, but we couldn't find anything. It was just the wrong season for it.
Leaves will definitely fill you up.
Well, and you could only eat the baby leaves as well, these little tiny sprouts as they came out. You couldn't eat the big leaves on these trees. So that was also really disappointing because it was at the end of that season and there was only a couple left and they were gone in, a couple of days.
So obviously you have four camps. Was there any particular reason why you chose Vine out of every camp? And maybe was there like a particular person that you bonded with, not on camera that we didn't really get to see?
Yeah, so I suppose you didn't get to see much of the boats on the way in. You sort of see the boats coming in, but of course there's other people on those boats. So you kind of, I guess, gravitated towards the people that you'd actually met in that moment, because otherwise you have no idea who to trust, who's going to be on your side. Everyone's kind of a stranger. So it's sort of you seem like you're not going to stab me in the back too much at this point anyway. So I'm going to follow you. And there was someone else that I'd spoken to like on another boat, and I almost ended up in top camp instead of Vine camp. And sometimes I wonder if maybe I should have, particularly because Vine camp got decimated and a lot of it was stuff that I disagreed with some things. And I'm like, if I ended up in top camp, this would not have happened to me.
So you said that you disagreed with things. Was there any like tension that we didn't get to see? Because the main tension that we saw throughout the show is like Adrian and Carla. We saw some in Top Camp. There wasn't too much in Rock Camp, but like, was there any like tension or rivalries that we didn't get to see in Vine? Because you seemed pretty cohesive, at least from the edit.
Yeah. I would say that every camp would have had moments of tension, and then as the groups get a little bit smaller, you either get along better together, or you might actually even get along worse as people who might butt heads. And there were a few things that came up, such as because we had an alliance with Top Camp, and I wanted to honor it because I wanted to play with integrity, and I'm a person of my word. If I say something, I'm saying it because I mean it. I'm not going to go and stab someone in the back. And I was big on the alliance because I knew that Vine couldn't just survive on their own. But then my camp wanted to get rid of the alliance, but not tell Top Camp about getting rid of the alliance. They're like, well, if it works for us, we'll just throw them under the bus. I'm like, well, yeah, if we're going to end the alliance, though, we agreed, both camps agreed that we would say that it would be done. So it would be, I was in the position where I would have to lie about it. So it would put me in a lying position, or I would have to then go against my camp and go and just tell them that I was against it. And they weren't too happy with the fact that I went, well, no, we've agreed to this. And me being a vegan came up for some reason. I find that as a vegan, a lot of the time it's not me saying anything about it, it's other people just having and harboring issues with it. And so they turned around and said, you want the alliance because you're a vegan. And I'm just sitting there going, what? How? What? How? It's just dumbfounded sitting by the campfire going, how does it help me in any way? They're not giving me food. So it has absolutely nothing to do with it. So there was a few issues with the fact that I existed as a vegan, and not that it was something that was brought up. Like it was mentioned on camera once or twice, but I wasn't every second in camp going, by the way, you're eating something that's not vegan. Like that just didn't come into it at all. So it was a very interesting situation for that.
So going into the wheel spin really early on, you get lucky and it lands on your number. Were you excited about that? Because I read on your Instagram like a couple days prior, like you were really struggling and you were having some problems. So
Yeah,
were you excited about being captain? Were you nervous? Were you concerned that there was a target on your back?
I think that most people didn't want the wheel spin that early. And even in that episode, like you can see Tess going, not me, not me, not me. After I'd had that power once, and when it was a couple later, and once I realized that it could actually land on someone twice, I wanted that power again so badly. And I was sitting there waiting for the whistle. I'm like, come on, there's some people I could definitely throw under the bus on this next one. But because it's so early in the game, if you create a lot of enemies at that point, they are immediately going to turn around, because you don't just make an enemy of one person, you make an enemy of the entire camp, because it became this sort of, that's a family, that's a family, that's a family. You piss off someone in a group, then you're potentially pissing off the entire camp, unless that person's an outsider. So my strategy going in was to actually kind of make friends with it as much as I could, so that at least the rest of the camp would support the decision, and that person would know they were there because the rest of their camp wanted them there. So they'd be more angry at their camp than they would be at me. And it actually worked out very, very well. And there were some considerations like who would also be really good to watch. And I knew that, putting Adrian and Carla in would be quite explosive to watch too. And I did end up getting, some promises of favors along the way. However, that didn't work out. Everyone that owed me one ended up leaving. So that backfired a little bit. But yeah, I was in the end happy that I had the wheel spin and I played it the best I could, but I would have preferred to have it slightly later or have it again later.
So was the Adrian and Carla tension like that apparent like throughout the entire island? Because I think the camps were separated by a decent amount. And then when I talked to Titus, he was like, yeah, it was really bad during our camp. So like, how did you observe it? Because you obviously like weren't in their camp.
Yeah, so it was definitely a bit of a trek in between them. And especially with the way that even with your background, you can kind of see that stretch on the beat. Although is that actually from our $1 Million
I
Island?
don't know. I don't know. I think I just wanted to make it like better than a backdrop of my bed. So
Yeah, no, that looks good. I love it. I think that might be
thank
from
you.
the Dutch version, but if you look at the Australian one, you can kind of see that strip of sand and it's relatively long. And so we're all stationed kind of evenly. And so if you're in top camp, so Brett from top camp had a bit of an issue with log camp because they were so far away and you didn't want to spend your energy walking that distance. So yeah, you're right that we didn't get around to other camps, and especially at the start when you're trying to build things up, you're focusing on cooking and making alliances within your own camp. You don't really have the energy to spend on making an alliance with other camps. With log camp, there was someone who had actually walked down the beach, and they wouldn't have even realized this when they said it to me. It wasn't, I hadn't had the wheel spin at this point, but they were talking about the tensions. He's like, oh, I'm going for a walk because I've just like the camp is nuts. So, you know, there's too many alphas, people are butting heads. It's an absolute nightmare. I'm like, that sounds like it sucks. And I remember the names from that interaction. And also, you know, anytime that you're in the arena and seeing loud and more prominent people and you could kind of go, I can see that there's issues that's going on. And I went, you know, well, it'll be fun to watch. But yeah, they weren't actually nominated to me on purpose. It was more a passing comment that I remembered. So
Any thoughts about putting yourself in the challenge, or you didn't want to pull a mic?
oh no, God, no, there was no way that I was going to put myself up. This bit was actually cut out and I wish that it hadn't been. But Anne asked me if I'd put myself in the challenge. And I went, God, no, it's a bad time of the month because my period had started like that morning or the day before, like 5 days early. It's not something that's really addressed so much on the show, but the fact is there's females there and there's people who are having periods. And I'm very open about talking about it because I think that it's something that does need to be discussed and no one should ever be sort of shamed into hiding it. So when it came up to it, I was like, no, 100%, like I'm not putting myself in there because I'm not at my peak right now. I'm dying. And it was a fun moment. Like the whole arena laughed about it, which was good. It was lighthearted and it was fun. And I love that sort of thing. So there was, even if I wasn't scared about losing the challenge, because it's very different to any of the other games like Survivor. You throw yourself in, if you don't win, you go home. It's not going for immunity or going for food, or like I would have loved to do every single challenge just to see how I could go because I'm a competitive person. But there's also that very real risk of not winning it.
So after the wheel spin, you actually have a good 2 weeks because you get that giant feast and you don't have to go to the camp versus camp challenge. So what was that like? So you go from wheel spin to feast.
Yeah, so Brett got the wheel spin for the camp versus camp. So what happens when you're in such a fasting starvation sort of, your body goes excellent like food, we love this, and you actually crash pretty hard after consuming food. So because your body gets used to this lower amount and starts to manage it quite well, and then you smash a bunch of food all at once. And people didn't really think about this at the time. I didn't think about this at the time. One of the other girls who like her partner works in some sort of racing where he has to manage the way his weight and that sort of thing, so he will actually pay attention to how he's eating, and like he'll use a big feast to encourage his body to lose weight afterwards. So we probably all put our foot in it by eating this huge amount of food and then losing more weight, losing more energy after this situation. So yeah, so as much as we loved the feast, it was really good to actually have some food and some, you know, actual bread and fruits, and yeah, it was good. It was very, very good. You could see how happy we were. And I was very happy not to be in the camp versus camp. And it was because I had the alliance with Top Camp and I had honored it with putting Nate in as well, because Nate wanted to go up and I made sure no one else from Top Camp went up when I had the wheel spin. So that's why Brett didn't put us up in the end. So yeah, it was good that that alliance worked out in that favor. The food was nice, but probably detrimental in the long run. And yeah, it was good not to have camp versus camp, except for the fact that it then ended up with us not having bracelets. So when it came to D-Day, we were screwed.
Yeah. So can you so I talked to Titus and he said that he tried stealing food from Rock Camp when they were at the survival challenge. Did y'all try to do any of that? Because I'd be like, they're not there. I'm starving. I need pasta. I need food. And they had the most food out of everybody, I think, other than y'all. So Did you try
Yeah,
food?
Rock had the most food. They absolutely had the most food, but I believe that Log became the one with most food after they were gone because they ate all of their food before leaving. So Tess managed to keep some of it, which she took with her to top camp, but they had a big feast and ate heaps of the food that night. So there wasn't stuff left for the other camps to scavenge, or I guess for Tess to take with her to wherever she ended up. We couldn't really leave our camp, so during that sort of stuff, like you're not always sort of free to roam. So I think even if anyone had been thinking about stealing it, we wouldn't have gone down to Rock. As far as I'm aware, no one went down to Rock, but they could have. And if I was in log camp, I might have played it differently. Like I might have been more comfortable with stealing, perhaps because we didn't have any food. But because I was in a position of knowing we had food, I wasn't going out and stealing anything, even though lots of people were. I think Top Camp was probably stealing the most food, to be honest. They were stealing more than Log Camp were, and they had food.
So obviously, the rock camp couldn't give you bracelets. I don't know why, because I guess the rules just said that they could give it to Log on D-Day. Was there anyone that, like, if they could give it to Vine, that you think could have given you like a bracelet? Because obviously that comes back to haunt you later. Maybe like Shawnee or somebody, because obviously she owed you by not putting her up. So was there anyone
Yeah,
like, God damn it, I wish it could have been give me a bracelet?
it would have been really good if they could have given it to other camps, but I understand why. It was because they lost the other camp, so they had to give it to the other camp. It was almost like a ha ha, now you also get that. You lose and you also have to give it to the camp that won. So it made for a lot more kind of drama. And then obviously they're going to be a bit sour because they've just lost to them, but they have to pick someone to give it to. And it gave them this power to actually take Brett off of the leaderboard, and they did that with Corey. So it's very possible that they still would have gone for the same someone. So Shani may have just gone and given it to whoever else was getting loaded up. It is possible though, and maybe if I'd gone to speak to Shani after losing it, if she could have given it to me, she might have actually given it to me. It would have had to be enough that it didn't throw me up into the next challenge. And I mean, even after I was eliminated, what happened to John T, who won? He immediately went up into the next challenge because he had bracelets. And it gets to the point where having bracelets immediately gets you put into it because people want to win the bracelets, unless they're just putting singles or twos or.
Yeah, so obviously D-Day was a reason why Vine struggled to get bracelets, but why do you think like Vine was struggling to get so many bracelets to begin with? Like you guys basically had no power for most of the game.
Yeah, so it was camp versus camp. D-Day is the one that took out Vine because we ended up with 9 people from Vine in it. So yeah, with the lack of bracelets wasn't fantastic. We did have some people who quit. So we only ended up with a few people in camp who would have, 2 or 3 bracelets. And anyone who had actually gone into the challenges wasn't winning the challenges. So they weren't coming back with that. And I guess because we made alliances, we also weren't getting thrown into challenges as much as some of the other people perhaps were. So there was no opportunity to actually bring the bracelets home. So that's kind of, I guess, where we got stuck with not having very much power with regards to bracelets and wheel spins and that kind of thing.
So going into the second D-Day, and it says it's D-Day for people with 1 bracelet and people that take a back seat, you need to prove yourself, which honestly I didn't like that wording because you did not take a back seat, like you were very much in the forefront. So yeah, you only got 1 bracelet, but half the people that were speaking on that challenge was like, who are they? I'm like, I don't know who they are, but I definitely know who you are.
Yeah.
So what was
Yeah, and
your
even Doc as well. Doc was not taking a backseat.
Yeah, so what was your mindset going into D-Day? And do you think if you actually gave food to Log, you guys wouldn't get nominated? Or did you think it didn't really matter anyways because 9 of you, well, 11 of you were in the firing line, 9 of you got nominated. So do you think it mattered if you're going to give food to Log? Because I think regardless, 2 of you had to go in just because of the way that the numbers were.
Yeah.
So
So it might have saved me. I was the last person that Corey actually put up, and he did actually apologize. He actually said that he had a hard time putting me up, and I guess probably because I had looked after them by putting up Adrian as well. So I think that some of them were a bit grateful for that, which unfortunately they weren't grateful enough to save me. But because Corey had more of a relationship with Brie and with Chloe from my camp, so they were less likely to go up. And he was really, really good friends with Chelsea. So if we had given them food, he would still have had to put up half of Vine Camp, and that was the argument for why people in Vine Camp were like, well, there's no point giving them food because regardless, they're going to have to put up half of us. So even though it could have saved some of them, I think the ones who were speaking the loudest were the ones who kind of knew that they would get thrown up. So I wanted to give them food. I wanted to just give them a cup of flour. We didn't have a lot, as much as people think that we do. And even when we were going through it and everyone's like, oh, yeah, we've got this many cups. I'm like, no, like, don't say we have that many because you're overestimating it and you're being all cocky about it. But that's not how much we have. And if we're going to be rationing this, that's not how much we have. But this whole kind of cocky, look at all the food we have, we're doing so well thing happened. And I'm like, it's not as much as you think it is. Like, if you actually work out how much in a serve and that kind of thing. But yeah, there was ultimately not a way to save the whole camp, so they didn't want to give it. And Jack had actually nominated himself for the challenge. He told Corey to put him up, so he wasn't actually just thrown into it like the rest of us. And Jack was the loudest about not wanting to share food with him because he didn't want to be saved anyway. He was nominating himself.
Yeah, so did your mind kind of feel a little bit checked out at that point? Because I saw on your Instagram, like you were really close with Annalise, and obviously she left beforehand. So did that kind of have like an effect on your mindset, or were you like good to go? Like it didn't really matter? Or were you
I
struggling
was
at
good.
that point?
I was good to go because you go into it knowing that eventually everyone you care about is going to leave. If you're wanting to be there till the end, and I want to be top three, that's where I was. I was going, I want to be top three. I want to be up there playing for the money in the very, very finals. So there was never any question about that. There was never me wanting to quit. There was never me going, I'm so hungry, I can't do this like some people were. I am absolutely a huge fighter when it comes to this. And like I said, very competitive too. So I didn't want to be in the challenge because I didn't want the risk of having to go home because I wanted to win. And the way to win was to either not be in the challenge or to win so many bracelets that you have immunity. It's really anything in between is just a risk. So I was, it's hard because I'd started to bond with Annalise, and especially because there were other people who, everyone I was close to or had an alliance with was slowly getting nominated and not coming back or quitting. So I was feeling a little bit deserted and alone in my camp just because I hadn't really bonded as much with some of the people who were left. And it was very hard losing Annalise because I can just speak absolutely transparently with Annalise, like no judgment. We think similar ways, and I think that we have a lot of common things that we've kind of been through. So it's nice when someone actually just gets you. And yeah, the next morning was really, really hard. So if I was going to go home, it was probably good, I guess, that it was at that point where it felt for me like emotional tenseness and all of that in the camp was at its highest. It was either stick around to the end, or at least I didn't have to put up with the drama that happened afterwards.
Yeah, so going into that challenge, you didn't really say that trivia was your strength. However, I read that you're a chiropractor. That was obviously your chiron, and a personal trainer. So you're used to dealing with pain. So were you excited in that way? Because endurance-wise, you could probably outlast these people. And how many questions did you actually get wrong? Because your legs were like almost purplish, and I don't think it was only just the 5 questions.
So I got quite a few wrong. And you had to keep answering the questions even when you got pushed far enough. So there would be 5 pushes forward, and most people, as soon as it hit that 5th one, because it was at the point it was pushing you past, so you're standing up straight like this, and that was like number 4 where you were kind of as far as you were, you couldn't lean back at all, and then that 5th one was actually pushing you that way. It might have been the 4th and 5th was pushing you, so you then had to bow yourself over this platform that's digging into your back right here. And that's why I was like this. I was counterbalancing the whole time. I completely lost feeling in my arms. I could hardly hold up the thing to keep answering questions. And it sucked because I knew I could be pushed any further, but I had to keep answering the questions. So I was at that maximum point that everyone else fell off almost immediately at. Everyone else that lasted longer than that was maybe 60 seconds. I was there for 45 minutes. I was up there for an hour and a half. So Jonty and I were up there the longest, and him and I were going for, I don't even know how long it was, just him and I. So if I could have maybe lasted a little bit longer, but the wind was enough to, as I got more fatigued, like my body just collapsed. The wind hit me and I had nothing left. And I literally collapsed off of the platform because I'd used up all of my energy. So yeah, it was about 45 minutes that I was at that maximum point, and I couldn't really adjust my feet because I was so far forward. I'd been trying to alleviate it. And I actually have endometriosis as well. So I get sciatica, particularly around different areas of my cycle. And so I had sciatica going down my right leg the entire time. So burning, extreme pain. My right big toe had kind of gone numb and burning. So shooting down the back of my leg for that entire time was sciatica. I do not recommend it. It did not feel good. But again, with endo, it's the chiropractic side of stuff like that. I wouldn't say that helped me being, qualified PT and being strong. That side of it has helped, and I've trained and worked out, and, I was stretching on the beach because, you couldn't work out, you didn't have the energy for anything, but I was just trying to stretch a little bit and stay mobile, and that probably worked in my favor. But yeah, the whole, I could deal with the pain because I'm used to being in pain. That was just something that you just fight through. It was the fatigue in the end from being up there for an hour and a half. And it took me like over a month to get the sensation back in my right big toe.
Oh, that just, yeah, I watched it. I was just like, this just makes me uncomfortable. Like, you look like a Circus Olay person. Like, I don't know how you're doing it, but like, I would just like jump off in a minute. I'll be like, nope. Done.
No, and look, I'll be honest, I really did, because the person who made the cracks about me being vegan and keeping the alliance of being vegan, that was Jack, and we had butted heads a couple of times, and I was like, I refuse to drop off after him. Like, nah, there's no way. So it was sheer willpower. And I'm like, every bit of training I've ever done has led up to this point, and I refused to fall. And then I realized that I was coming second. Like, it was me and Jonty left. I was like, I have to hold on because I can actually win this. So, and then I didn't.
So then where did the tension with Jack start? Because I thought it was originally because he wanted to starve out Log, but I mean, you were in charge of food with Shannon, and it said in the edit that you didn't want to give up food. So where did that tension start? Because all of a sudden we see, I just want to beat Jack. That's all I care about is I just want to beat Jack. And I'm like, okay, where did this come from? Like, I understand he's polarizing. We never saw it with you two.
Yeah, it was really funny that they showed that, but there wasn't much of the other stuff, like the fight at the campfire and yeah, so I didn't love how he spoke about, like, I can understand why we didn't want to share. And it is a game. Ultimately, people have been really upset about the fact that no one gave Log Camp and the humanity, but no one was starving except by choice, because you could just go home. And you could steal depending on your morals, but like if you couldn't handle it, you could go home. So we all chose to be there. Everything that we went through, it was very, very difficult, but you could quit at any point. People just didn't want to quit because it was a game. So yeah, like there's been a lot that's going around about, either everyone's supportive of the fact it's a game, or everyone thinks that people are terrible for not having given Log food. But you're there to win. You're there to potentially win up to $1 million. So I completely understand both sides of it. I would have been happy. Like, I felt really bad, especially after Kylie had spoken. And my biggest reason to not want to share was because if we were going to last to the end as a camp, we needed this much food. If we gave away that food, that would be an extra day of, well, now we're not going to last. So you're planning how much food you have and how that's going to get you through the rest of the game as opposed to the next day or two. And so that was why I hadn't wanted to, but I was feeling really bad for Kylie. And I know that, they had bracelets, I had people, and I'm like, it would work out well to give them a cup and solidify our relationship. But I didn't want to give it to them as a bribe to get us out of the challenge. Like, that didn't sit well. Like, I wanted to give them a cup of flour to help them out as opposed to as a bribe, which is probably ridiculous because a bribe would have been, better for us. But yeah, I was willing to actually get a cup of flour and sneak it away. And if I'd stuck around for longer, I probably would have snuck a cup of flour, but I wasn't there to do it at that point. So yeah, but the whole thing with Jack, coming back to that, was when Brett came around for Camp vs Camp, he told all of the camps that he was going to put us up. And I've gone, he's not going to put us up, because he was just saying, oh, well, I haven't decided, but I'm thinking I'm going to put us up against one of the camps. So you'd better pick your, can't remember how many they had at that point, 13. You better pick your 13 best fighters to go up against us, because you'd only have so many people in the camp as the smallest camp. So they only had 13, therefore we would have to pick 13. And it was chaotic, because we went, well, how are we going to decide what 13 want to go up? Who actually wants to fight for themselves, and who knows that it'd be better off sitting it out? Some people were happy to sit it out. I put my hand up because I would refuse to let someone else fight my own battle. If I'm going home, I need to know that I've had the opportunity to give it everything that I have. I can't just watch someone else lose it for me. If I want it, that's great, but to lose and then go, I had to sit and watch it happen, would be awful. And for some reason, people decided that Jack should pick who would stick around. And he didn't choose me. I know how strong I am. He'd put no effort into getting to know me. And because the guys they made a second campfire and they were hanging out there. They had like their little beach club. And so he'd gotten to know the people who'd come to his campfire, but he'd never came up to the main campfire to get to know anyone. So we hadn't really, he had no idea who I was, or my history, or the fact that I'm strong, or anything like that. And he went, these 13 people, okay, well, you can go up, you can go up, you can go up. And he didn't pick me, and I'm standing there going, why would you not choose me? I'm stronger than half of the people that you've put in here. And the fact that you're telling me that I would have to sit it out, and the fact is we're not going to go in it because of how I played the wheel spin, because I forged an alliance with Top Cam. So it was a real stab in the back to go, okay, well, you don't get to go and fight for yourself, even though everything you've done for the camp, and you're more than capable. So yeah, that was kind of where that all started, because it was a real
Yeah, that makes sense. I personally don't understand all the hate he's getting for starving people out, because it's like you can just go home, like you can quit, like you can get a meal if you decide to leave. Like it's not like inhumane. It's like I want you gone.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And of course, it was coming from if I was in the losing camp, I'd be doing everything I could to try to barter and forge alliances so that I could have food. But yeah, the whole inhumane thing, and I do think we need to be careful about the names that we call people, both on and off screen, because it's a game. You can leave if you've had enough. If you can't handle it, you can leave.
So after losing the memory challenge or the trivia challenge and being so close, what was your mindset like after that and going into the survival challenge? Did you feel like defeated? Did you feel like, okay, I finished second, I can finish first in the next one? Like, how was that? Because I don't think you had that much recovery time too.
No, we had very, very little. We didn't even know there was going to be a survival challenge. We thought it was going to be like Camp vs Camp, where we went home. We had no idea that there was actually going to be an opportunity. So we had a really short amount of time to go back to our camps and, I think, what did we do? We grabbed some food, or maybe packed bags, and then we had to go back to the arena because it was already so late in the day. And then it's nighttime and time to sort of start this survival challenge. And so we had no idea we were going to have this second opportunity. And it was really disappointing with how bad my memory is when I went, oh, good, it's another memory thing. Fantastic. Shit. Wait, can I swear? Sorry.
Say whatever you want. I've had a lot of people say a lot worse, and I just laugh about
it. Yeah, to find out that it was another sort of memory game after the trivia, the trivia was way worse. I was absolutely relying on my body strength to get me through it. And I knew that any memory stuff, I would have to rely on the other components, because I'm just not fantastic at that. Sometimes I manage to pull stuff out of I don't know where, but yeah, then the fact that it was memory again, and you had such a short period of time. So, you'd write down everything you could, you're staring at it, you haven't written down all of those items of food you can see. and you just blank for a second, and then your time's up and stuff comes to you 2 seconds after that buzzer is gone and you're gone. I could tell you the year that the tuna had been packed in. Like there was a year written on it. I could tell you all of that, but did I remember to write tuna down? No, no, because there was a possibility that you could tie with someone. So if you tied with someone, they were going to ask for all of these other details, like how many cans were there, how many cucumbers, or whatever else. So you're not just remembering the items that are there and their names. You had to remember everything you could, that attention to detail of everything in the box, just in case there was a tie, because then it would be, okay, well, you don't get to look in the box again. Now, what else do you remember about it?
I wish they would have actually told us that because I feel like there's like a lot of behind the scenes for like the challenges as far as like the rules that we don't see that would clarify like a lot of people's decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Because obviously we need to know the rules. So there's an opportunity for us to learn the rules. So we have to be capable of that kind of stuff, and know what means that you've lost, what means that you've won, so that it's nice and clear. And I guess, if it doesn't get to happen, but yeah, so just in case there was the possibility that they would ask other questions, you had to remember all of the rest of it. And I would say for me that pushed the other stuff out of my brain. I probably would have remembered more if I wasn't trying to remember there was 10 cans and, on the off chance we had to ask more. But at least I came second for that one as well. And especially with, the tensions and stuff that were coming, you could see the tensions in the other camp and the emotional side of it that was coming in. And I was starting to get like a lot of anger about the food, and a lot of our camp had been decimated too. So, you're only left with a couple of people left. There's no one left to watch your back. And yeah, like Jack was probably in a very good position because he had the food, and so he could barter. He only had one bracelet. He wasn't going to immediately end up in the next challenge. That all really worked in his favor. I would have been better off winning the survival challenge than winning like John did, because like I said, that kind of shot him in the foot. He got to win a challenge, which is awesome, but then he ended up in the very next one and he would have been exhausted from it.
Connections out on camera that we didn't get to see because there's 100 people on the island.
Not really. Everyone was there to play a game. People thought it would be very Love Island, I think, when they went into it, but you agree.
What is that feeling like going home, and what is it like losing that challenge and then realizing like it's done? And did you think that like if you could have got saved, do you think you would have by anybody, or were you just like resigning yourself that you're going to eat a big fat meal at a nice hotel?
Look, I was absolutely devastated, and I was in two minds because I was struggling with the social side of it. Like a lot of people think I'm an extrovert, but I'm extroverted, introverted. So I actually really struggled with the social side of it, and all of the emotions and having to deal with all of these people and feeling like I couldn't really be myself because there was no one else like me, at least in my camp. So I was in two minds about, I don't know if I can handle the social side, especially because things are starting to get really, really bad with the emotions and the tension between everyone. So part of me was glad that I didn't have to deal with that. A bigger part of me wanted to be able to stick around, and then maybe if I got the wheel spin, I'd just throw whoever I had enough of under the bus for the next challenge. So yeah, really devastated, wanted to stick around. Once I lost that challenge, the whole survival thing, I was like, I'll fight for it, but if I don't win, that's okay, because I am really, really proud of how I performed. And the fact is that everyone could see how hard that I fought and how much I wanted to be there. And so I at least got to leave with my head held high. And if I was going to leave on a challenge, I'm glad it was a badass one like that. Like that was a bloody hard challenge, and people could see how hard you fought. I fought for myself. I didn't have to rely on anyone else. It was purely me that got me to that point. So yeah, devastated, but proud.
At least your camp got food, so you knew that they were okay. You knew that everybody else was starved, so that must have made you feel a little bit good.
Part of me was like, I wish I could just be a fly on the wall to watch what's about to happen with Jack having the food and Log needing food. So, because I would have played it pretty differently. I would have immediately made friends with everyone and made sure that no one wanted to put me up for a challenge, and they would have looked after me. So yeah, I would have played it very, very different and probably made friends and like friends with people like Geordie as well. So with what just happened in the last episode, how Geordie got food and then didn't, but I probably would have forged a relationship with them earlier so that it wouldn't have gotten to that point. But it made for great TV though. I loved watching that.
Yeah, so my last question is any fun moments maybe after the game at like post game?
Well, I actually got to hang out with Titus for a little bit. It was really nice to get to know Titus better because he was still there when I got out. And so it was really surreal getting to see people not on the island because you knew them from the island. So you're suddenly in this more of a real world situation. And it's a bit traumatic as well, going through what we'd gone through. We'd all lost a lot of weight. We didn't even know how to eat anymore. Or so to get to be able to sit and have a drink with these people and get to know them in a real world scenario, especially because you're not really ready to go back to normal life because you've been living and breathing. And even though it's not real life, it feels like it's real life. It feels like nothing else exists outside of it. So to then come back to reality, it was actually a really good adjustment period to have those people who'd been through exactly the same. And I got to leave with most of my camp. I mean, the only other people that were that lucky were Rock Camp because they left with their whole group of people who were around them. And of course, that was a lot earlier in the game. But I mean, how lucky that I got to leave with people that I'd actually been spending time with and get to bond with them a little bit more. And yeah, so as it went, wasn't the worst time to have to go if I was going to have to go.
Thank you. Bye.
No worries. Have a good night. Bye.
You too.